Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, hold up. We didn't turn on the lights. There we go. All right. Well, oh, come on. Let's start the playlist over, shall we? The end of possible war with Iran Day. What? You think it's over? I don't think so. Hold on. Before we start talking about that, let's look at where the charts are going. So, for those of you watching this in the future, yes, war with Iran started this weekend. Let's call it World War III. Or maybe we could call it World War 4.5. Something. Anyways, coming over here. So, war with Iran, treasuries saw a massive spike on the open. Pretty good gap up and then just really shot up there. But now they are coming back, and they're coming back quite hard. Why is that? Well, because oil. Whew. Okay, listen. Oil at 72 isn't that bad. 75, okay, like above 75, I start to get concerned. It could go to 100, and if it goes to 100, that's like, that's going to really screw things up. So, S&P 500 also down, and you got the flight to safety bid is in gold and silver. Oh, huh, interesting. Well, silver's not anywhere close to where it was, but still. It's doing pretty well, still. Kappa down. And the Japanese yen down. So the yen is a safe haven currency, and seeing it down and down this much in this situation is a little bit concerning to me. I think that it is probably still primarily about politics in Japan and the desire of the current conservative party in Japan to have easy monetary policy to pump growth. And then we got Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin took a little bit of a dip going back to like the 6,400-ish area. But we didn't make new lows. I think we're okay. Nothing too bad. Not we. I mean, I shouldn't say we because I don't own Bitcoin, but you get what I mean. I think they're okay. Okay, let's see how many American-hating Americans join this trading chat to complain about America and Iran. Yeah, because we're actually at... Oh, it's the end of possible war with Iran Day. Yes, you're right. You're right. The end of possible war with Iran Day. So here's the thing. Is going around... Like, for instance, I was seeing videos from Asmongold. Kind of... almost giddy about what was going on. Kind of talking like it was already over. Oh, no, sir. I mean, Khamenei is, or however you say his name, the supreme leader is dead. Yes. And probably like the top 40 of his cabinet. We made a big strike and everything, but I'm not hearing any reports of rebel organizers getting started and all this sort of stuff. Right. So, if anything, we've probably got a more hardline government in Iran now. And so far, they are not willing to give up at all. Donald Trump saying that their plan has always been 4 weeks. So could get interesting. There has been attack on shipping in the Strait of, what's it called? The Strait of Hormuz? I forget. Anyways, I think that there's plenty more to come. And for trading in particular, these governments know that markets react to these sorts of things. That's part of why the Trump administration seems to always wait to do these things until after the markets are closed on the weekends. And you're going to see Iran come out, and once we get going here today, you're going to see headlines. In all likelihood, they will come out and do things to try and make a show for the markets, in the hopes. And the big thing that you see, and again, is that the treasuries are getting killed now and giving up some of last week's gains because of concerns about inflation driven by the price of oil spiking so high. So they're going to do things to try and, in particular, show that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. What about U.S. bases been destroyed? Well, I don't know if they've been destroyed, but they have been attacked, yes. They have the thing is that the U.S. and Israel have built pretty impressive anti-missile defenses. So, of course, I haven't seen anything this morning, but we had a report that there was 3 deaths and 5 injuries on the U.S. side. Like so there's missiles are going to get through. But it's not going to like completely destroy there. Plus, they pretty much already evacuated the most important bases. Or not like, I wouldn't say the most important bases, but in the run up to this, there was a lot of evacuating people and stuff. So, like non-essential personnel and stuff. I tell you what, given this situation, the 10-year treasury is awfully thick. Let's come in here, change this to, I think it's H, right? NY H. Are you sure that they've been destroyed? I mean, I would think that if the entire base had just been completely destroyed, that I would see more than that about it. I mean, I don't like strikes in that place doesn't necessarily mean. I tell you what, also we got to be careful. I think there would be a tendency. For us to think that now that the war has started, that we're going to get better information. No. Iran has been running influence operations in the United States and across the world for years. It's just they do it through Russia and China. So the Russia and China bots out there are working double overtime. So be very careful about the information that you use. I mean, this is going to be, this is kind of the tough part where I feel like that I can provide the most advantage to you in trading is being able to sort out what's the best information and get on top of stuff before the markets react and so forth. It's kind of hard because you're digging down and you're trying to find, that information that's not priced. You're gonna be going to the places where there's a lot more misinformation or at least, stuff to have to sift through, right? And not 100% sure I understand myself why it is that I go into what I do, but it tends to work pretty well. We tend to be on top of it. One thing, I just give you an example because there's people in Discord. that were very, very skeptical when they heard that Khamenei was killed. And of course, now Iran has admitted that he's dead, but they were like, "There's no way!" Like they didn't believe it. Well, like here's the thing: is that there are times when governments will push their propaganda line, and there's times when they're going to give you the information. And when it's the time to give you the information, if they give you a lie, then that really, really hurts their credibility. People don't listen to them anymore. So in those situations, they are not going to lie about it. That's why, for instance, Iran could come in and say, "Hey, actually, he's not dead. We survived. All of us survived." Yeah, they could do that, but then they would be a joke. Nobody would believe another thing that they say, because the governments would immediately say, like, apparently the U.S. and Israel have pictures. So, yep, the influence ops were rampant all weekend. They're overselling the ever-loving shit out of Iran. They land a single missile, and 1,000 accounts holler about how 40,000 square miles of Jews were evaporated. Yeah, this is it's wild stuff, man. The like Reddit, like the reactions on Reddit are, some of them are bonkers. I mean, I think that a lot of people on Reddit, I have just kind of been, I don't know, they've had their minds warped or something like that. But a lot of the stuff that I see on Reddit really makes me feel like, hey, this has got to be a foreign influence operation. Like, there's no way. I'll tell you something else, because I've seen like some of the comments from some of these immigrant Congress people. Yeah, that's why the real reason Reddit is dying. I'm trying to say this carefully, because I don't want this to turn into like a xenophobic rant per se. Okay, but here's the thing you got to realize: people are very, very tribal. That is like tribal behavior, in my mind, is really the defining characteristic of humans. If you look back on the evolutionary history, what we see from genetics, and it suggests that the reason why humans survived and other hominids did not was because of our tribal behavior. Okay? So it is a very, very strong force in people's minds. And so you would think, oh, well, when somebody says something about the war that seems like anti-American or whatever the deal is, I just discount it. That seems to be what people do. It's like, oh, Rashida Tlaib, that's just what they do. It's no big deal. No. I think it's big because it's so deeply ingrained in people's minds. They can't help it. So when people tell you they're not from your tribe, I would pay attention to that. And there was a lot of people, including people in our own government, basically coming out and saying, oh, no, I don't identify with the American tribe. Very much a lot of that happening. It's kind of pathetic because Mideast propaganda efforts are the equivalent of Bollywood movies and their believability, but it works apparently. So Ancephus has not so much happened. That is not good. Well, okay, so let's just kind of review real quick what has happened. First of all, the U.S. Conducted strikes in Iran. They killed the supreme leader and like 40 of their top leadership. In fact, the person that was picking up, that was like in charge, is like the head of some security council, like way down there. Okay, so they really decimated Iranian leadership, first of all. And they also, were attacking missile silos, all those sorts of things. The Iranians hit back by shooting missiles like practically everywhere. Practically everywhere. There are some videos of a few missiles getting through the Iron Dome in Israel. But, like you see the explosions, it's not kind of... in fact, I don't think I've gotten any reports of any deaths in Israel. But I could be wrong about that. It could just be a matter of time, right? Iran says that those were their old stocks, that they haven't fired their new missiles. And there are concerns that they have hypersonic missiles that will get through. Okay. So I'm expecting to still see that. Okay. And they hit everybody. They hit Israel. They hit Dubai. They were evacuating the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, and all that sort of, it's just everywhere. They have also attacked various European countries that have not been involved yet and are basically kind of saying, we really want to de-escalate this. So it's kind of funny. Iran's trying to pull European countries into it somehow, and they're hesitant. Yeah, go figure. Then the biggest thing for us is that there has been activity in the seas. Okay. The U.S. has sunk several large ships of Iran's. My understanding is that Iran has shot at least 3 oil tankers. I don't know what the results of all that was, if these oil tankers were sunk or what happened there. But they're claiming that they've done that. What I think you're going to see next is the Navy, as the week progresses, I think that you're going to start to see people's attention focused on the waters more, because that's going to affect the price of oil, right? One thing that I would say is I think that there's going to be some disagreement among traders in terms of how much should this affect the price of oil. Well, if they shut down that shipping lane, that can really hurt the price of oil, for sure, because 20% of the world's oil supply goes through that strait, okay? But let's say that they keep it open. Well, there's still going to be the disruption of oil from Iran itself. And you might say, well, but they only sell to China. Well, yeah, but then China has to replace that and buy more from other places. So how that turns out in terms, obviously it's higher oil prices, but how much higher should it get? Should we go to 100? That's going to be the big debate now, right? What you're seeing this morning was definitely large player coming through and putting a bet on the treasuries that they're not going to be able to cut interest rates because of inflation from oil. So we'll see. Qatar cut off LNG production. Okay. The EU has way too large of a sympathetic Islamist population to get involved. Watching Starmer's speech, you can tell that guy's pooping. Yeah. No, it's a real thing for sure, man. For sure. Politicians in the EU are basically afraid. I mean, I use the word afraid, but really it's just political calculation. They want to stay in office, and the Islamic population in Europe has become so large that it's kind of hard to get elected if you piss them off. And so they're doing everything they can to kind of walk the line. Oh, you think it's fear that they would explode into violence? I mean, I'm sure that's a thing too. But come on, we're talking about politicians. they care first and foremost about staying a politician. You got to realize, keep in mind that you know all of those like really big theater nerds in school, like they weren't good at math or anything else, and they just got really, really deep into theater, right? And then, but you know, they had rich parents and everything, and then they grow up and they realize that they're not going to be a movie star. So you know what they do? They become politicians. And what else are they going to do? Like that's all they got. If they are not in office anymore, like especially if they go out of office in a way that is like, you know, like they look really, really bad, how are you going to make a living, right? Is basically you either retire or you can become a lobbyist. That's it. And if you damage yourself in a way that you can't be a lobbyist anymore, then you're screwed. So these people are very, very motivated to keep their jobs, I have to say. Will we have a declaration of war, or have we given up? Well, that's a good question. It seems kind of hard to pass anything in the Senate right now. But, you know, like let's say, for instance, that Iran actually does have missiles that can cross the waters, and they start shooting stuff at mainland USA. Then maybe you could see a declaration of war. Right? As it stands right now, so here's the other side of it. Okay, like the thing that I think if you're a conservative or a Trump supporter, you probably don't want to hear. But it seems to me that the administration had basically been planning to do this for a long time. And, you know, like there's this whole thing like, okay, they wanted to give it a week because there was going to be negotiations, and then they had the negotiations. They totally fooled me, because they came out on Friday and they said these were very productive discussions and yada 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 yada, and then next thing I know, there's you know, missiles going off. It's like, what? So I thought it was, you know, I thought that we were spared for that weekend. So I think to some extent the negotiations were a ruse. I mean, that had always kind of been part of the plan and all of that. But there's even some people like that were involved in the negotiations kind of saying that they felt like the negotiations were undermined. So, but a lot of the things that happened required very high levels of coordination and all of this sort of a thing. They would have been planning it for weeks. And so while this is a preemptive attack to prevent them from having nuclear weapons, I think that, you know, you could say this wasn't like negotiations broke down or anything. They were planning on doing it. And because of that gives Democrats a bit more room to say, no, we shouldn't support this. We think that what the administration is doing is reckless. That's what they're going to say. So, yeah, there would probably need to be some escalation on the part of Iran to really get a declaration of war. On the other hand, there's going to be people that are going to say, oh, we should have a war powers vote or things like that, so that, because, you know, the president is allowed to do military action, but only for a certain amount of time, and then Congress has to approve it, and Congress could come in and get a vote that would just stop all military action, right? There is no way that they would do that. Like, if a Congress actually did that, that would forever undermine U.S. credibility on military action, right? People are afraid because they know that the president can just come in. But if they were constrained by Congress, then they do whatever they want. Because Congress is never going to act. People don't want to go to war. That's a negative for you. Politicians are kind of incentivized to not go to war, at least in the modern age. Right, so like the 30K was, I don't think it was 30K, was it? Oh, I don't even remember now. Maybe you're right. But that was another thing, was that he was saying, you know, you better not do that thing. And then they killed a bunch of people. But first they said, don't do that. And they said, oh, we're not going to do that. And so then they didn't do anything that weekend. And then they did kill like 40,000 people anyways. And then it was like, we got nothing. But I think that was because the administration had already made the decision that they were going to go in 2 weeks. And they knew that it was coming, that it wasn't that week. For real. Isn't that crazy? Wow, here they're not. I think that, I mean, you keep in mind that every military action that has happened since the end of World War II, which is, I mean, literally dozens of actions have all been, you know, without a declaration of war. And you could argue, well, it's unconstitutional. The Constitution intended that Congress had to declare war for you to do military action. And you know what? I think you're right. I mean, I haven't looked at that in a long time, but my recollection from it is that it does seem like it's unconstitutional. But you know what? It's not practical. It's not practical. The reason that it works the way that it does is because it's practical. And nobody, the judiciary, the president, or Congress, is willing to step in and change that, because they know that if they did, it would be so devastating to America's place in the world that it's just not worth bothering with. So don't let there's going to be individual politicians, and they very much promote themselves. Ron Paul probably being the most prominent one, being on the anti-war position, and that there shouldn't be any military action without a declaration of war from Congress. But just know that that's never going to go anywhere. And look at where it's gotten us. We haven't hardly won any. I don't know. The thing is that, like, what do you define as victory, right? Right. You know, even for the people in the Vietnam War, which was like a real war, even though there was no declaration of war, but that was very much like a real war. And you know, there was probably many times at which the American public said, yeah, no, we won that war. But the problem was it just kept going and going and going and going and going. That's a possibility here with Iran, too. I don't think that the hardline regime in Iran is just going to give up. The way that this is probably going to go, I think, is there's going to have to be like rebels organized. It probably takes time for that to start happening. They come in, they probably get assistance at some point from Israeli troops on the ground. They push through, and it's going to be a purge. It's going to have to be a purge, because like the hardliners, like the theocratic government supporters, they're never going to give in. Some of these people, it's a religious ideology. They'll fight to the death. So the Trump administration is saying, oh, we think this is a 4-week thing. Okay. I think we're going to be getting headlines out of Iran much longer than 4 weeks. Like maybe they'll. I don't know if this is just their intention. I kind of feel like that they're setting a standard that like it's going to come back and bite them in a while. They might be thinking, yeah, we're going to do airstrikes, and then the airstrikes are going to stop, and then when the war continues, people will say, hey, you said only 4 weeks, and then they'll say, hey, well, we only meant like the airstrikes and stuff. Are you going to be getting headlines out of Iran for much longer than that? For sure. It's only when the other side is 100% gone. Well, so when you get things like, like the Vietnam War in particular was a different situation from the others because it was basically a proxy war, right? The Vietnam War was basically a proxy war between the United States and Russia, China. The Korean War was basically a proxy war between the United States and China. And, that because you have a state actor behind it, that's just going to go on forever. Right. Versus like the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Well, I would argue that we won the Iraq war. I mean, Iraq is its own country now. It's relatively stable. Like, I feel like the Afghanistan war, we kind of, well, I mean, to win that one, it is like, you have to kill them all. That's never going to happen. So again, it depends on what you define as victory. But see here with Iran, what is victory? Victory is regime change. Are we going to get we got regime change in Iraq? We got regime change in Afghanistan. Yeah, we're going to have regime change in Iran. But what happens after that? Well, I don't know. This one, Iran, is so much different of a situation because you're talking about a country that's much more developed. Much more developed. Right? Their capital city is a big city. It's well developed. Wait, the Taliban are, well, yeah, basically what happened was the United States left and the Taliban took over. Why am I getting beep sounds? Because my data just died. Are you guys still with me? Well, I think something happened with Rhythmic because where did it go? Okay, so you guys are still here, so I think that means no, don't save current settings. Well, since there's nothing to see, I would come over here to my face. I'll try starting it up again. Honestly, the Afghanistan thing, how that all went is pretty wild because Donald Trump was intending to pull out, and then Joe Biden was in charge and said, "Oh well, they said they were going to pull out, so we're going to do it," and then they did it, and it was the biggest disaster. How do you upload your stream? Why does it compress, it seems? So if you go on YouTube and, like, there's the little icon, you can change the stream quality of it, right? And I would put it to the full quality if that's what you want to. Okay, well, I got Rhythmic Trader Pro going up again. I'm getting data over on the Ninja Trade. Okay, here we go. All coming back. So yeah, if it seems overly compressed, it's probably because YouTube turns the quality down on live streams. You have to intentionally turn it up. Like, I'll show you. Here I am. We're watching it. There you go. Settings. Quality. And the auto goes to 480. And you want 1080. And then it'll look really sharp. It's curious that that pulled up on my other profile. How long have you been trading and how long did it take you to be profitable? Well, so we've been doing this since 2017. So 8 years-ish. I don't like the term profitable because this kind of implies that there's like some sort of level that you get to and then you're going to consistently make money all the time. And that is just not the reality of retail day trading anymore. There was a time. There was a time when maybe you were on the floor in the 80s and 90s, or the early 2000s, there was some electronic trading where you could be the market maker. And once you kind of figured it out and got big enough, you would just make money pretty consistently every day. And maybe you would have a blowout once a year or whatever, but you'd still make money and it was all okay. That's really not the case anymore because the algorithms just dominate. So you can't really do that anymore. So really, you're going to be like the best opportunities for retail traders is really more in the area of speculation. Oh, sorry, we should bring the screen back. It's really more in the area of speculation, and speculation is going to be very inconsistent, you know? So like, are you going to make money every year? I don't think I've ever met somebody that can show me they're profitable every year, 5 years in a row, unless they were like running a real fund. You know, like there's some momentum funds that they're going to do that, right? You're talking about a completely different game, right? They're managing $10 million or more and yada, yada, yada. Okay, so. But the other thing that I would say is I'm not asking you to listen to me because I've made so much money from it. We do pretty well, and I've actually been on a hot streak, but I trade very, very small amounts. I'm not taking a lot of risk. Doing this primarily because I enjoy it. And the things that I say are all things that you can find in the data itself, backed by the data itself. So maybe that's useful to you. Maybe you don't find it useful. But at least you know that the thing I'm saying is true, as opposed to what most trading influencers out there do. They give you complete nonsense. Y'all forgetting this is also the future. I'm not joking. It's 2026. War is different now. Intel is different. I'm not arguing the past, but the future may be bad. So trying to compare some of those forever wars of the past when the best we had were planes that barely flew and tanks that got stuck. Now we have sharks with laser beams on there. Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. The United States will almost certainly achieve regime change, in my opinion. It's really more a question of how much effort has to go into doing that. Because here's the thing. If you come in and you say, we want regime change, and then you just get an even bigger hardliner over there in Iran, and then you do 4 weeks of strikes, and well, that's the best we can do. I guess we got regime change, and it's still this religious zealot over there. You think about what that does to American credibility, right? So they're going to make it happen. They're going to make it happen. It's a question of how much damage happens in the meantime, right? Because the whole thing is that, well, Iran keeps saying, you know, if you hit us, and we're going to hit you back hard. And then they hit back, and so far the hit back has kind of been like, that's it. But I think there's more to come. So just hold on and we'll see how bad it gets. One of the things was that there was a terrorist attack yesterday, and we don't have any evidence that it was an Iranian sleeper cell, but Iran has said that they have those. And the U.S. has been concerned about that. And there were many Iranian nationals that entered the country illegally, and then they caught and released them. So that's a real concern. I would think, by the way, that if that were to happen, you would wait until everybody's going to work. So we probably haven't seen that yet. That might be something that we see today. Okay, so if trading is not consistent, can a retail trader change their life with trading, being a full-time trader? Well, so it is certainly possible, but the chances of that happening are like 1 in a million. And the person that does change their life with trading like that, they probably were just lucky. They're probably just the one person that you flip a coin and everybody flips a coin, and there's going to be one person that actually gets hits every time. Just statistically, it's going to happen. So if you are I don't like where my life is right now, and I think that day trading is the solution, no, it's not. Go do something else. Do almost anything else other than day trading. Day trading is a really good wealth enhancer. But let's not say day trading. I should be more broad than that, because even if you're really rich, day trading, you're probably going to lose money. But trading in general can be a really good wealth enhancer. That's for people that already have money. So people that are, you're established. You have money to spare. You can put some money into a trading account, blow it all, and then refund it next month, and it's not a huge deal to you. Okay. I can't tell you how many stories I've come across from people, they're middle class or whatever, and especially there's many stories coming from women where their husband became just absolutely obsessed with it, and it never happened, and they just blew all their money. And if they just saved it, they would have been fine, but he couldn't stop. That's a gambling addiction, right? Don't do it. Yeah, how to become a millionaire trading. Start it as a billionaire. There you go. Yep. So it's just a very difficult game. And again, you got to keep in mind that a lot of the ideas that have been implanted in your head by society about trading when you were a little kid aren't relevant anymore, because the robots came in and took over everything. That whole segment of the market, so humans are just not competitive in it anymore. I think I'm break even after 10 years. So I am, it depends on how you factor the different streams, right? So I think if you look at my, so if you look at my 10-year trading, which was in ZN, which in the very beginning, I've lost money on that. But I've made money since it's been micros. So there's that. And then if you consider the money that I put into a stock portfolio, and I don't really trade it per se, but I do actively manage it. That's definitely been profitable. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I go back and I look at my stock portfolio and it just like blows my mind. Because in some respects the performance is just okay, but then in some respects it's like, wow, this is really good. 'Cause I have plays in there that are like 5x winners. So, you know, and then if you consider like the YouTube on top of that and everything, then we've definitely made money. But I don't think that that really answers the question that most people are looking for, right? Because the most people are thinking, I want to be successful day trading. What I need to do is I need to go out there and find the person who has had the best, most consistent success in day trading and just try and copy what they do, right? And what I'm trying to tell you is it doesn't work like that. Was it position sizing that made the difference? No, I think that it was really more me knowing when to trade and not to trade and just getting more experience. You start to realize the kinds of situation when there's going to be enough volatility for you to actually make money, when it's too volatile, when there's just no opportunity available, you just sit on your hands. Right? You take less trades overall, only get in when I really, really know that there's something that's really going to move it. Today would normally be a time when I would want to be trading actively, but the volatility in the 10-year is still relatively low. And because it's like you're going to see buying because of flight to safety risk, but selling because of oil risk, that's not one that I want to get involved in at the moment. If I start to see something more significant go through here, then maybe we'll, you know. The good old days was before 2015. Well, okay. So during the quantitative easing days, so basically 2010 to 2015, yeah, you could do really well on trading because the impact of all of that liquidity was lots of strong trends. So it was easy to trade then. But the change that I'm talking about, like when it kind of stopped being viable for retail traders to be market makers, basically shifted around the financial crisis, right? Like Navinder Singh, that guy that got hammered for spoofing and causing the flash crash, right? He was like the last one. He was like one of the best at that, and the robots were eating his lunch, so he started fighting back. And that's kind of how that whole thing happened, right? So it was around the 2008 crisis. What happened was those big players, they all got blown out, and then they were all replaced by robots. And it's just a different game after that. Now, you have these robots going through and testing every possible pattern and combination of patterns that they can possibly come up with, trying to figure out, and then they kind of have this thing where we find this strategy does well and this strategy does well, and they kind of have stuff to try and game out which strategy is going to be on the rise and which one is not, based on how profitable they've been recently. Because what happens is it gets too profitable, and then too many people start trading, and then profitability of it wanes, right? So trying to come in and just look at the market data and make money by holding a position and taking on a risk is just not practical. It's just not practical. So I like really any of this stuff that you see on YouTube and TikTok and whatnot, people talking about chart patterns and stuff like that, it's almost all complete nonsense. I mean, even back in the old times, those kinds of patterns, there wasn't really edge in it. At least the things that retail traders are talking about. And now it definitely is. Now it's like, even if you had, you found a pattern, now it's almost impossible to find a pattern. How would you go about raising capital? I did 504% with my breakout, but with only a 10K balance. Well, so here's the thing. If you start a commodities trading pool, that's what they call it. It's a commodities trading pool. There's all sorts of interesting rules about whose money you can take and everything. But basically, you have to go and get a Series 3 license, and then that gives you the ability to start a pool and run a pool legally and to manage other people's money. But they have to be rich, essentially, right? And then, but if you have a commodities trading pool, you're required to provide the past 5 years history of your pool, or the history that you do have, right? So 5 years is kind of the rule. So if I have a strategy or whatever, and I'm gonna convince people to buy into it, it's really, really hard to do that unless you have a 5-year history to show them in the first place, right? And then you also have to consider that the investment needs of these people is different from yours, right? Like, you might think, well, all I care about is the total return, but that's not necessarily what they care about. They might just want exposure to a certain asset. Like, if you're trading silver, they just want exposure to silver, right? So basically, you have to create a product that kind of investor actually wants, and then you have to have the connections to be able to get in front of those people. So it's very, very difficult to raise money for that. You really got to have something special. There was a time when it wasn't really a thing, and like a lot of these guys that got into momentum early. But now there's so many of them. Now like, you're more likely to start a fund by doing a family fund. It's kind of the way that the industry is going. Which is like, there's one guy that's really, really rich, and he hires a team to do it for him instead of doing it through a hedge fund. This is cheaper to do it themselves. Yes, is CL your bottom left dom? That is correct. Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, it's oil. It's oil. I got E-mini up top, E-mini 30-year, 10-year, 5-year, and then oil, micro 10-year yield futures, and 2-year. Oil has been relatively quiet through this session, hasn't it? But E-mini starts in 30 seconds, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, Nav never spent the money he made from the market. Well, apparently he gave it to people, and they lost it all. Which, honestly, I think is makes sense. I don't know what the word is to say. Like, in a situation like that, a lot of those guys were going to blow out and would have lost it. But also kind of sounds like money laundering. Also kind of sounds like money laundering. I think this week is going to be interesting regardless of geopolitics. Yeah. Well, I mean, not only do we got the geopolitical front, but there's some big data points too. Economic reports and stuff. Okay. Well, let's come in here and see, by the way. What do we got? Biggest Saudi Oil refinery halts operations after drone strike. Migrants filmed catching and butchering swans and ducks in the UK and Ireland. Oh my gosh. That parallels the US Haitians can't. Yeah. You guys remember that whole thing? Good grief. They have video, huh? Okay. 3 US F-15s downed over Kuwait as Iran war spirals, reports of paranoia and anxiety at the Pentagon. Well, does the US even still use F-15s? Okay, it's only 3 days of Operation Epic Fury, and Americans are waking up to shocking images of fighter jets going down over Kuwait and the incredibly rare scene of pilots parachuting down with a look of disbelief and confusion. Kuwait's defense ministry says several U.S. aircraft have crashed. Okay. U.S. CENTCOM. By the way, if you're not following the U.S. CENTCOM Twitter account, I would recommend following them. At 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 U.S. F-15 Strike Eagles flying in support of Operation Epic Fury went down over Kuwait due to an apparent friendly fire incident. That's 3 U.S. warplanes, apparently one incident. How does that happen? Of course, given the already thick fog of war and propaganda narratives fast going back and forth, it's entirely possible they could have been shot down by Iranian defenses or just from across the border. Iran is saying it has shot down at least one F-15 fighter jet. Like, I thought that we didn't use F-15s anymore. Certainly not on strike missions. Here's the fuller CENTCOM narrative. During active comment that included attacks from Iranian aircraft, ballistic missiles, and drones, the U.S. Air Force fighter jets were mistakenly shot down by Kuwaiti air defenses. All 6 aircrew ejected safely have been safely. How do you, like, you not know it's an F-15, though? Like, come on. Kuwait has acknowledged this incident, and we are grateful for the efforts of the Kuwaiti Defense Forces and their support. Well, okay, if nobody died, then I think it's okay. Still, it doesn't look very good. I don't think most people can stomach a 50% drawdown, so I might be effed with getting investors. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the way that momentum funds work. Momentum funds have 50% drawdowns. I mean, frankly, the stock market, when the stock market goes down, it tends to be like a 50% drawdown. So let's come in and clear our levels. Oh, so they're at a... There's a reason why they bounced at 10.5, I think. Okay, okay. I've noticed, by the way, that Zero Hedge has almost entirely switched over to a kind of like an anti-US narrative. They are very anti-war-ish, so... Given that there's now an official Pentagon casualty death count, and given the fact that the Gulf allies and especially Israel are getting hit hard by Iran's significant ballistic missile arsenal, President Trump himself may now be realizing that he bit off more than he can chew in this ultra-risky regime change operation, as yet no clear endgame. Trump has talked about reaching objectives without defining them in some eerily unpredictable, familiar with the 2003 Iraq war under Bush and the neocons recall true The Trump just told the Atlantic magazine on Sunday morning that Tehran wanted to speak with him while feeling the pressure of the bonds falling, and that he was willing to do so. They want to talk. I have agreed to talk, so I'll be talking to them. Yeah, but then they've been saying no. Soon after that, it became clear that's not happening. The Iranian genie is out of the bottle, or Pandora's box Persian style, which could make even Iraq look like a cakewalk. Adding insult to injury is that this is everything Trump and his team campaigned against. I wouldn't say that it's everything that Trump and his campaign or Trump and his team campaigned against. Everything. But he did kind of campaign against forever wars. At the same time, he also said very clearly that he would not allow Iran to get a nuclear bomb. So I don't think that this is breaking campaign promises per se. Trump has already pivoted to saying the conflict looks to take up to 4 weeks. Below is the man that was taped by, it's just like that thing when we bombed their nuclear sites, and afterwards they said that their refineries were completely obliterated and yada yada yada, and now they're saying, well, we need further strikes to do that. And this again is one of those cases where like you got to realize when they're talking like the propaganda and when they're being serious. And that was like Donald Trump saying something he probably doesn't even know at that point how much we've actually done, how much damage we've actually done in the immediate aftermath. You don't know. You just say the thing to get everybody to feel better about it, and then a couple of weeks later, then we get the real information, right? Yeah, can you believe Midnight Hammerhead was been almost a year? Let's see here. In a town near Jerusalem, 9 dead and dozens wounded. Hezbollah has entered the war. One of the issues is that, like, the news doesn't really start going out until about right now. So it's usually like the stuff that I'm talking about, like you probably will see more headlines today. I don't know we'll get those until I'm like at work, like 10 o'clock Eastern time. Or not 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock Eastern time. Because this story from Zero Hedge doesn't sound like it. Now this one, they're saying clear footage of a hypersonic missile. I've seen this video. I don't think that one's a hypersonic missile, because the hypersonic missiles that we've seen from the Ukraine war were way more impressive than that. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. I think that Iran does have them though. I tell you what, guys, this is going to be a ride. It's hard to tell with the payload. Yeah, well, I do recall seeing ones from the Ukraine war where, like, it had a big payload, right? But I'm talking more like the speed. Like, that one is like, okay, that was going faster than the other missiles, but the ones that I remember seeing, it was like it come in so quick that you blink, you miss it, you know. I have to say though, it seems to me that like the anti-US, or let's just say anti-war in general faction, which if I'm honest with myself, I think I've always kind of been pro fix wherever the problem is. I've kind of been more of an interventionist, but I don't really care anymore. It's just, it happens, and I try not to really take a position on whether it's good or not. It happened. It's happening, and we're here to deal with how markets react to it, right? But you know, they're saying, well, the US, maybe they bit off more than they can chew. But again, if this was like, okay, we do 4 weeks of bombing and then there's still a regime in Iran, then, well, that's not going to work. And if it was like the Vietnam War, which, because the Vietnam War was like, we're just going to bomb North Vietnam into oblivion. Well, that's, you know, okay, that would be a problem. But this almost certainly involves rebels and troops on the ground at some point, right? So, yeah. It's going to be like if this ends up being a really, really bad idea, you're not going to be able to see it for years and years and years, right? If this is a bad idea, if this ends up being like a regretted like a month from now, then something has really, really gone wrong. Running this through a connection so small it feels like a crack in the window. 99% of the country can't even get online. That's why you don't see videos or images from inside Iran. In Tehran and Karaj, every time people hear an explosion, they cheer from their windows. This is a guy on X. Presumably in Iran, but we can't verify that. They chant slogans and celebrate because another terrorist base of the regime has been hit. I'm sure the rest of Iran is exactly the same. To all honorable Iranians abroad, be our voice louder and more decisive than ever. Take to the streets and flood the internet with one clear demand. Trump, do not stop the attacks. Right now, every mosque and religious gathering hall has been turned into military bases for the IRGC and repression forces. At Tehran's Mosala, dozens of repression vehicles are parked and being prepared. Prove to Donald Trump, Netanyahu, IDF, CENTCOM that these are no longer religious sites, that they are official regime military bases. Bomb them. The people of Iran do not want these places anymore. This has nothing to do with religion. They have become fortresses of terror and must be destroyed. Also, strike the home of the reformists, as they are the main anti-Israel and anti-America operators inside the regime. My connection is too slow to push this properly, so please tag everyone you can. We will take to the streets at the right moment. We will win. Long live. Okay, so they're saying it's not safe to take to the streets yet, but that it will happen. And treasuries do appear to be moving down again, and maybe in part because the open so far has been a positive one for the S&P 500. And it looks like gold and silver are getting hammered here too. So that's not what I would like to see, but, well, what you gonna do? Oh, yeah, here's a thing on Patriots win about the F-15s. Lindsey Graham, Cuba's next. Wow, he never stops, is he? Fourth U.S. service member killed. Shall we recenter here? Never stops repressing his latent homosexuality. Wasn't he like originally an independent though? I don't remember. I think he always been a Republican. Held it since 2003. He is definitely a war hawk. He's always been a Republican. Oh, but he took part in a leadership challenge against House Speaker Newt Gingrich. Maybe that's why I remember him being like the other side. Trump gonna yap from the White House at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Okay. Why are we still talking about? So one of the things that I've seen a lot around the internet, you know, like there's a war with Iran, and they're like, but what about the Epstein files? Guys, what more do you want? It has become a thought terminating cliche is what it is. It's become a thought terminating cliche. Something that you say so that you don't have to think anymore. Because you can't handle the cognitive dissonance. But that's what people are talking about in chat. My wife was telling me that the car was low on gas, and I was expecting to do that this morning. But seriously, like it drives me nuts every time that they're like, this is just a distraction from the Epstein files. How long do you think that the Epstein files should be the top story? Is that do you want it to be the rest of your life? Is that's how some of these people are acting? Like they released the files. You got to get people to do something, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what's supposed to happen. Yeah, it's wrong how long it took. But I certainly have some questions about why it wasn't released But I mean, the whole thing it was that there's not anything in there they would be able to prosecute people from. But well, and that part does seem to be true, but there's definitely been fallout from it, right? So I kind of feel like that they should have put it out, that we were wrong about that. But what is that emoji you used there? What are thoughts going to war for the... Going to war? Oh, is that an oil can? We're going to war for the oil? I don't think so. Madi. So, a couple of reasons. One, at least in the short term, it's a juice box. We're going to war for the juice? Oh, my... Okay, you're right. That was embarrassing. Okay. That's another kind of narrative I see that kind of irks me, to be honest with you. Okay. So the assertion is, we're only doing it because Israel told us to. Like that Israel has Donald Trump by the balls, and he has to do whatever Netanyahu tells him to. And, okay, well, that's kind of like conspiracy theory territory, right? Because you're alleging something that we can't directly prove or disprove, essentially, right? But I would argue, though, that the United States goals and incentives are pretty much the same as Israel's right now. So, you know, the U.S. going in and doing that, I don't really think reflects that Israel is forcing us to do something that's against our interests or that we don't want to do or something like that. And I think that the thing that really shows that in this particular instance, two things. Number one, who's getting hit the most and taking the most damage from this right now? It's Israel. Okay, like we're not at risk. Maybe we're at risk. I hope that's not the case. I hope that there's not a terrorist attack and I'm going to go get killed at work today or something like that. But okay, but the Israelis, they are getting direct fire and when going outside and watching missiles and hoping that they don't come and fall on them, right? But then number two, there was the Texas mass shooting. We don't know if that was an attack, but I think it could be. We'll see. Anyways, but then the second thing is that all of the other Middle East countries are joining the U.S. on this. So, like the reality is that everybody's just fed up with Iran. Everybody's just fed up with it. Oh, I also hate the false flag thing. Anytime that something happens, it must be a false flag. Okay, guys, just remember this, okay? When something happens, the narrative or the theory that starts to become the most popular online does not become the most popular online because it is the most likely. It is because that is the one that generates the most engagement. Okay? The idea that there is some sort of secret thing going on and that the US government is secretly behind this, it's a false flag, right? That's engaging to people. So their mind has a tendency to grab on and hold on to it. And it has lasting power too, because once they've attached themselves to that sort of a theory, some people, it becomes part of their identity and then they're never going to let it go, right? Like I'm sure there's still people out there that are absolutely convinced that the United States did 9/11 or that Israel did 9/11 or something like that, right? It's just the way that the internet is. Right? Well, no, only if something happens that makes my dominant ideological narrative look bad, then it's a false flag. No, I mean, here's the thing. There was 2 shootings yesterday. One of them in Virginia. I think that the media kind of went quiet about that one really quickly. I think because they suspect that it was actually just a road rage incident. And then there was a shooting in what was it, Austin, Texas or whatever. Well, I haven't heard anything about like connections to Iran, but it's a strong possibility. So we don't know for sure on that one yet. But I'm kind of thinking that if that's going to happen, that you're going to start, it wouldn't happen in the first few days. They would wait until like, you don't do it on a Sunday when everybody's at home. You're going to do it like when people are going to work or doing things. So I am very afraid that we're going to see it. I'm very concerned that we're going to see it. Hopefully not. The other side of me thinks, you know what? The United States intelligence operation has been so phenomenal throughout all of this stuff that any kind of plot like that will be stopped. Hope so. Wasn't Virginia a state? Yeah, I think you're right. Anyways, that's where we're at. How many wars will you fight for the? Well, I'm not going to be a service member. Like if there was a draft today, they would say you're too old and you have a gastrointestinal disease, and they wouldn't let me. Right? So it's not like my life is on the line. But the thing that I've been thinking throughout, especially with Argentina, frankly, but and it may turn out to be the case here with Iran too. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes, because the outcome of this might be, hey, this last 30 years of just kind of like, sitting back and letting this fester and everything was dumb. And actually, when stuff like that is going on, we should just go in and take care of it. Maybe that's the conclusion that we get. I don't know. Well, let's see what happens. Maybe it's not. Maybe this ends up being a real quagmire and we really regret it. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, no, I'm in Utah. I'm not. Oh, no, Mahdi. Yes. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, in the past, you had like a state actor behind it, like China. There was a proxy war with China and Russia. Well, China and Russia do kind of support Iran, but they're not gonna help them. They're not gonna start a proxy war. So I really do think that you're gonna get regime change, but you're probably gonna get regime change followed by a guerrilla war, right? But it is going to be different because the majority of the people in Iran want freedom, and we're never Muslim in the first place. So, like, I think that was different from Afghanistan. Could be wrong. Man, that really they really just came down there with, what was the news that just came through here? Oh, ISM. Yeah, of course. U.S. ISM manufacturing PMI 52.4 versus 51.5. And prices paid 70.5 versus 60. Yeah, that'll definitely do it. Anyways, I hope it all works out. Nah, I hope it all works out and we're all skiing in Tehran in a year. That's my I always try and envision Like, what's the best case scenario? I think the best case scenario is that we get regime change, that the people in Iran are happy, and that we go vacationing in Tehran and go skiing. They open ski resorts. Yeah. Also, so I would like, if Iran becomes, because like you can't go vacationing in Iraq, right? This isn't, no. Afghanistan, you're not. But it may become the case in Iran. Iran is a much more developed country. If Iran becomes a place where it's safe to be a tourist, I really want to go there. I really, really want to go there. So, I hope that that's what happens. And we meet many great people, because the people of Iran that aren't like the crazy hardliners sound like great people too. All of the people here in the United States that are Iranians, I've seen a lot from them, and I've been very, very impressed. All right, guys. Time for me to get going. I will see you tomorrow. This is going to be an interesting week. It's interesting that we held for so long until that news, but that news was definitely a sell. I don't know if that selling can continue, though. Well, we're at our regular session 2 sigma, negative 2 sigma. So that's the most that I'm going to expect, right? So keep that in mind.